Welcome to Life Stories. What would you do if one day you discovered that everything you knew about your own body was a lie? Imagine finding out that you were carrying a child, not through love, not through choice, but as part of an experiment you never agreed to. The truth is terrifying, and yet it's just the beginning. This is the story of Emily, a nurse who never imagined that the system she worked for could be the one that would betray her most deeply. Now, faced with a mystery that threatens her life, career, and the future of the child she's carrying, Emily must decide whether to stay silent or fight for the truth, no matter the cost. Stay with us, because this journey will leave you questioning everything. What would you do if your world suddenly became a nightmare? Let's begin. Emily Johnson sat in the sterile, dimly lit examination room, her fingers trembling as they clutched the ultrasound results. She hadn't meant to come to the hospital that day. It was supposed to be just a routine checkup, a formality after weeks of feeling dizzy, exhausted, and increasingly overwhelmed by something she couldn't explain. But now, staring at the image of the small, developing fetus on the screen, everything she knew about her own body, about her life, was unraveling. Miss Johnson, Dr. Bradley's voice was skeptical, his eyes scanning her with the precision of someone accustomed to questioning everything. Are you sure you haven't been intimate with anyone? Emily swallowed hard, the words sticking in her throat. She had never been with anyone. She lived alone, her life quiet, consumed by her work as a nurse. How could this be happening? I'm telling you, she whispered, voice shaking. I've never had sex. Dr. Bradley raised an eyebrow, his suspicion clear. You're 10 weeks pregnant, Emily. 10 weeks. You're a nurse. You know what that means. The room seemed to spin. Her chest tightened as her breath became shallow. I don't understand. I can't be pregnant. It's impossible. The door creaked open, and Laura, a fellow nurse, stepped in, her face a picture of concern. Emily? Are you all right? I heard you weren't feeling well this morning. I'm fine. Emily forced a smile, but it felt like a lie. Just a little dizzy. Dr. Bradley glanced at Laura, then cleared his throat. Could you step outside for a moment, please? I need to speak with Emily privately. As Laura hesitated, casting a worried look at Emily, she finally nodded and left. Dr. Bradley leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. Emily, he began slowly, his voice low, almost predatory. You realize this is making everyone uncomfortable, don't you? Pregnant, without any explanation. It's not something people are going to believe. But I'm telling you, Emily's voice cracked. I don't know how this happened. I haven't been with anyone. Dr. Bradley exhaled sharply, his gaze narrowing. Look, I can give you the results, but I'd suggest you keep quiet about this. Our department is under a lot of pressure right now. You wouldn't want to make things worse for yourself, would you? Emily's heart pounded in her chest as the weight of his words sank in. Are you threatening me? No, he said, his lips curling into a tight smile. I'm just offering some advice. After a long pause, he stood and walked toward the door. Chief Turner wants to see you this afternoon, he added before closing it with a quiet click. By the time Emily arrived at Chief Turner's office, she could barely breathe. Her hands were clammy, and her thoughts raced faster than she could process them. The office was cold and impersonal, the kind of place where decisions were made without a second thought for the people they affected. Come in, Chief Turner's voice called from behind the large oak desk. Emily entered, her steps hesitant. Turner, a man in his early 50s, was standing by the window, his back to her. He turned as she approached, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Emily, he said in a tone that sounded too rehearsed. You wanted to talk? I need answers, she said, her voice gaining strength despite the storm brewing inside her. I need to know what's going on. Turner raised an eyebrow, almost amused. You know, sometimes the truth can be inconvenient. He walked over to his desk and sat down, folding his hands. Sometimes it's better not to know too much, don't you think? Emily's heart raced. I'm not leaving until you explain to me what's happening. Chief Turner sighed, leaning back in his chair. You're pregnant, Emily. The truth is simple. Sometimes science does things we don't understand. But you're special. You're a perfect candidate. Candidate? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. For what? Turner smirked. You see, sometimes miracles happen. And you, Emily, you're part of something bigger than you can possibly understand. Later that night, as Emily lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind refused to slow down. Dr. Bradley's and Turner's words echoed in her head, intertwining with the memory of a strange incident just weeks before. She had been working a night shift, her headache so intense she could barely keep her eyes open. Everything after that was a blur. A flash of bright lights, then nothing. Was it possible? Could it really be that she had been drugged? Could someone have done this to her without her consent? As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Emily's phone buzzed with a message from Laura. The message was simple, but chilling. I heard what happened. You're not alone. If you need anything, I'm here. Emily stared at the screen, her mind racing. She had to know the truth, and she couldn't do it alone. Why is Emily so determined to uncover the truth, even when it feels like the whole world is against her? How far is she willing to go to find justice for herself and for others who may be victims of the same system? The answers might change everything. As Emily made her decision to take action, she could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her. There was no going back now. No matter the cost, she was going to expose the truth. But little did she know, the people pulling the strings weren't done with her yet, and the biggest revelation was yet to come. Emily sat at her kitchen table, the hard drive she had stolen from Turner's office sitting in front of her. Her hands trembled as she powered up her laptop, the glow from the screen casting an eerie light on her face. She had never felt more vulnerable, yet more determined. The night was thick with silence, the only sound the steady hum of her computer. The weight of the evidence she had gathered pressed heavily on her shoulders, but her mind couldn't stop racing. Was she doing the right thing? Could she really take down a system so entrenched, so powerful, that it seemed to thrive on the pain of others? The faces of the women, her, Martha, and the others she had yet to meet, flashed in her mind. They were depending on her to bring this darkness to light. The hard drive clicked into place. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the files began to load. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, hesitant. She could feel the room closing in on her. The investigation she had started had already cost her so much. Her job, her peace of mind, her trust in the people around her. Now it was threatening to take everything else. The first few files were technical, full of jargon that made her head spin. But then, as her eyes scanned a specific document, everything froze. Her heart seemed to stop beating as the file opened. Project Jen, subject classification. Her breath hitched. Her name was there. Emily Johnson. Her personal information, her work schedule, her psychological profile, all laid bare in black and white. It was like reading her life from a stranger's perspective, reduced to nothing more than data points on a screen. But what stopped her dead in her tracks wasn't just the invasion of her privacy, it was the note at the bottom. Subject teen, Emily Johnson, grade A, perfect candidate for Project Jen. She scrolled through the file in a daze. Each word stabbed deeper into her as the horrifying realization set in. She had been chosen to be a part of something far darker than she could have ever imagined. She wasn't just a victim, she was selected. A knock at the door made her jump. Her pulse quickened. She hadn't heard anyone approach. She quickly shut her laptop and walked cautiously toward the door, her mind still reeling from the discovery. When she opened it, she wasn't sure whether she was relieved or terrified to see Laura standing there, her face pale and anxious. Emily, you okay? Laura's voice was soft, as if unsure whether to push or pull. I don't know, Emily admitted, her voice cracking. I just found out something. I don't even know how to process it. Laura stepped inside, glancing nervously over her shoulder before closing the door behind her. She could sense the tension in the air, but Emily didn't know where to begin. How could she explain what she had just uncovered? How could she make Laura understand? I found my name, Emily said quietly, her hands shaking. I'm part of it. Project Jen. They've been watching me. They chose me to be part of their experiments. And I didn't even know. Laura's face went ashen, her eyes widening. She took a step back, almost as if she were trying to absorb the gravity of what Emily was saying. You're telling me, this whole thing, it's been planned? They've been manipulating us all along? I don't know how far it goes, Emily whispered, but I know one thing. They've been using us like lab rats, and I'm not the only one. The words hung in the air between them, thick with the weight of betrayal. Laura shook her head, trying to process what Emily had said, but Emily's mind wasn't on Laura anymore. She felt a familiar, suffocating sensation, the feeling of being watched. She quickly crossed the room, pulled open the blinds, and peered out into the darkness. Nothing. But the feeling didn't go away. You're not safe here, Emily, Laura said after a long pause, her voice low, almost apologetic. This is bigger than just us. You know that, right? There are people in the hospital who, they're not just watching, they're controlling. Emily turned back to face her, her heart racing. I know, but I can't stop now. I'm already in too deep. I need to expose this, to expose Turner, to bring him down. Laura hesitated. Are you sure you want to do this alone? You can't trust anyone inside the hospital anymore. Emily felt the weight of her friend's concern. She knew Laura was right. She had trusted too many people, and now she didn't know who to trust anymore. Not even Peter. Especially not Peter. She reached for the hard drive again, her fingers brushing against the cold metal, and made a decision. I need to go to the police, she said, her voice filled with a quiet, resolute determination. I have the evidence. I can't let them silence me or anyone else anymore. But as soon as the words left her mouth, a cold chill ran down her spine. The phone rang, the sound cutting through the air like a knife. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Emily, don't go to the police, the voice on the other end said. It was deep, cold, and familiar. Her stomach sank. Peter? She breathed, barely able to comprehend the words. Listen to me. Peter's voice crackled. You don't know what you're walking into. If you go down this path, you'll be burying yourself along with all the others. They're watching. They'll know everything. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears as she pressed the phone harder to her ear. What are you talking about? You're the one who... I'm trying to help you, Emily, Peter interrupted, his voice tight with panic. Don't trust anyone, especially not the police. They're just as much a part of this as Reynolds. And the truth? They'll bury it. Just like they've buried everything else. As his words hung in the air, Emily felt the world closing in on her. What was the truth? Was Peter really trying to protect her? Or was he part of this system of lies and manipulation? Is Peter really trying to protect Emily, or is he just trying to cover his own tracks? The truth seemed so far away, and yet it was right in front of her. But would Emily risk everything to find it? She stared at the phone in her hand, the decision weighing heavily on her. She had one shot left, one chance to end this madness. But would she make it out alive? Or would she be swallowed by the very system she was trying to bring down? The clock was ticking, and Emily had just made the hardest decision of her life. The next step could be her last. Emily's hands shook as she stood before the police station, the weight of the decision pressing down on her chest. She had walked away from everything she knew to get here, driven by the need for truth. But now, standing in front of the heavy doors, doubt crept into her mind. The voice on the phone, Peter's warnings, they echoed in her thoughts like shadows that refused to leave. He had said not to trust anyone, especially not the police. But here she was, ready to stake everything on the hope that what she had was enough. She had to trust someone. And she couldn't do this alone anymore. As she stepped into the station, a wave of cold air hit her, sending a chill down her spine. The building was old, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as officers moved about in the background. Her heart raced in her chest as she walked toward the desk, her eyes scanning the room nervously. Can I help you? The officer behind the desk asked, his voice flat, uninterested. He looked at her, then back down at the papers in front of him. I need to speak with someone about a medical crime, Emily said, her voice steady but laced with fear. The officer raised an eyebrow, a skeptical look crossing his face. A medical crime? You'd better have something concrete to back that up. I have proof, she said, her fingers tightening around the hard drive in her bag. She could feel its weight, heavy with the secrets it contained. She wasn't just carrying data. She was carrying the truth. The officer gave a dry laugh. Everyone who walks through these doors has a story. What makes yours so different? Emily hesitated, her mind flashing back to the countless nights she had spent piecing together evidence, to the quiet moments when she had thought she was just another voice in the dark. She wasn't just any woman. She was someone who had uncovered the truth. And now, she would make sure it didn't die with her. I have names, files, evidence, she said, meeting his gaze. And if you don't listen to me, more women will suffer. More will disappear. It's bigger than you think. The officer didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at her for a long moment, the skepticism slowly giving way to something more guarded. Finally, he stood up. Follow me. Hours later, Emily sat in a small, sterile room with a cup of water in front of her. She was exhausted, her mind spinning, but she couldn't rest. She had come too far. The officers had taken her evidence, running the files through their systems, verifying what they could. She couldn't afford to sit back and wait for their investigation to unfold. She needed to act, to push them, to make them believe her, before it was too late. The door opened and Chief Reynolds walked in. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had prepared herself for this moment, but seeing him in person was different. He looked almost normal, but the coldness in his eyes was unmistakable. Emily, he said, his voice smooth, too smooth. I understand you've been making some accusations. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had spent so many sleepless nights researching, gathering evidence, and yet facing him now, the walls she had built around her convictions seemed to crack. You think I'm lying, she whispered. Reynolds smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I think you're confused. Sometimes the truth can be difficult to swallow. But Emily, you've been part of something much bigger than you realize. You've played your part, just as all of us do. Emily shook her head, standing up abruptly. No, you took my body. You used me. I didn't have a choice. You think anyone ever has a choice? Reynolds leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. The world doesn't work that way. If you want to move forward, you have to do things, difficult things, things that others can't or won't understand. I gave you an opportunity. You should be grateful. The words cut through Emily, but they also lit a fire inside her. He didn't get to win. Not like this. I don't need your permission anymore, she said, her voice firm, resolute. I've already won. The door opened again, and an officer stepped in, his face tense. He looked at Reynolds, then at Emily. We have confirmation, he said. The files match. The investigation's been launched. You're done. Reynolds' face shifted, just for a second, a flicker of something raw. No, he said, his voice trembling. You don't understand. You can't destroy this. You can't. It's over, Emily said. You can't silence me anymore. As the days passed, the case exploded into the media. Emily's name was all over the news, plastered on every front page, but the relief she felt wasn't as sweet as she'd imagined. The truth was out, yes, but so much had been lost. She found herself standing in front of the courthouse, the weight of everything heavy on her chest. The trial had just begun, and with it, the knowledge that her life would never be the same. People turned to stare at her as she entered the building, some with admiration, others with suspicion. She was a symbol now, a victim turned warrior. But she couldn't escape the cost of it all. Peter's face still haunted her, his voice still echoed in her mind. He had betrayed her. Everything he had ever said, every word had been a lie, and yet the pain of it was unbearable. Do you feel like a hero, Emily? Daniel asked, his voice gentle as he approached her outside the courthouse. No, she whispered, her gaze distant. I don't feel like a hero, I just feel broken. He placed a hand on her shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. You've done something no one else had the strength to do, and because of that, lives will change. You've given people hope. As the trial continued, Emily's testimony rang out like a battle cry, shaking the foundations of the medical world. One by one, the defendants fell. Reynolds, the others involved in the conspiracy, all brought to justice. But it wasn't just them who paid the price. Months later, Emily stood at the edge of a park, looking at her baby, a small bundle in her arms. The wind rustled the leaves around her, and for the first time in months, she felt peace. She had done it. She had brought the truth to light, and she had saved the future for her child, for the women who would come after her. The scars would never fade, but they no longer held the same weight. She had reclaimed her life, and with every step forward, she left behind the shadows of those who had tried to crush her. "I did this," Emily whispered to her baby, her voice soft but filled with pride. "I fought for you, and you're going to grow up in a world where the truth cannot be hidden anymore." She smiled down at her child, the tiny hands gripping her finger, and in that moment, the pain, the loss, the betrayal, all of it felt worth it, because she had won, and she was ready to live. How does Emily's journey resonate with you? What does it say about the power of truth and resilience? If you were in Emily's shoes, would you have had the strength to keep going? Share your thoughts below and let us know. If you enjoyed this story, comment 100 to let us know, and feel free to share this video with your friends. Thank you for watching Life Stories.